Welcome to the Dear Lovejoy podcast special. Ooh. Oh, it's brilliant. We've got Megan Hine coming on the show today with her book Mind of a Survivor, the book that I love, the book that I've read in, picked it up, read it in 2 days because I just thought it was amazing.
The book that you bang on about constantly in every conversation we have.
I love it. It's really, do you know what? It's really appealed to me. I don't know why, but I do know why. I started reading it and it really just, it's brilliant. It's a book of adventure. It's a book.
What's it called?
A Mind of a Survivor. It's a book of adventure. It's a self-help book. It's bright. It's clever. It makes you think. It makes you realise what's going on, and I think it's brilliant. And she was brilliant as well. I really liked her. I tell you what. Let's listen to her. Here's Megan Hine.
This is just a guide to modern life. Modern life is hard to get just right. It can frustrate you and annoy. And if it does, right into Dear Lovejoy.
Welcome to my kitchen, Megan Hine. Thank you very much for coming down here.
Thank you for having me.
First thing I want to do is I want to give you a bottle of wine because we've decided that it would be nice to give you a guest. But Mark said that's such a rubbish idea to give Megan because she probably won't drink. Do you drink?
I do, yes.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I do, yeah, thank you.
Well, the man in the shop told me it's a nice bottle of red, so there you go.
That's brilliant, thank you very much.
So obviously you don't drink when you're up a mountain.
Well, no, not normally, no.
Not normally?
Not when I'm looking after other people. Okay,
your book has had a major impact on me. It's one of those things that I picked it up and read it, and I always bang on to Mark about the fact that we are still nature. And he laughs at me. But whenever we're talking about the problems on this, I go, we're nature, we're still nature. And in essence, I think that's what your book's about, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's very much about reconnecting with nature, which I truly believe is our natural habitat. You know, I really don't believe that we've evolved to live as we do now in this modern world. There are things missing from our lives. And I know sort of more recently there's been a sort of rise in sort of mental health issues, things like stress and anxiety and depression. And I think a lot of that is just the way that we live at the moment. There are so many stresses that impact us every day. Whereas when you go back to nature, it's so much simpler. It's all about survival.
So I read an article about you, and because I like getting people on this podcast who inspire us and have something to say, I ordered your book and I picked it up, and just from the first page, I'm going to read the first paragraph of your book. I was like, wow, and I just read it for 2 days. This is the first bit. There's a popular rule of 3 you'll hear if ever you go on a survival course. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. I'd like to add another 3 seconds without thinking. There you go. And then you say, because nothing will kill you quicker in the wilderness than switching off and making a bad decision. Now, you take that theory and you take it through into our modern life, which is the thing which really got me. It was the simplicity of it all in a nice way. That I really like. So the book is a self-help book, really, isn't it? But with lots of stories about your adventures.
Yeah. So the idea was triggered really by a couple of questions. So from a very young age, I used to read the typical sort of explorer books, Shackleton, Oates, Hillary and Tenzing, all these amazing books, and I remember just being so fascinated by them. And the physicality of the hardships that these explorers was enduring sort of went without saying. They were sort of very cleverly worded within these books. But the thing that was missing, and even as a child I recognised this, was the fact that they very rarely talked about their emotions and how they overcame quite extreme situations that would break a lot of people. But they very rarely talked about how they overcame those things and how they dealt with those emotions. And then through my own experiences of guiding other people, and through my own experiences of being dropped into wilderness situations where you have to think really fast on your feet, I've realised that actually what I do is I separate out my emotions and I have to put them in a box so that I can get on and do what needs to be doing at the moment. If I'm dealing with for example a road traffic accident, you can't have those overwhelming emotions. You can't let the horrendous things that you might be seeing get in the way. I think people like paramedics, A&E doctors must do the same sort of thing, and they're faced with pretty horrendous sort of extremes of suffering. You have to be able to do something with those emotions so that you can actually focus on the here and now. And it was like, well, actually, those things can you take the ways of those coping mechanisms into everyday life?
So what made you write it?
Well, I was actually really fortunate in that I'd done an interview for, I think it was the Guardian newspaper, and off the back of that, I had several literary agents get in touch.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. Well, it's good. I mean, because the two bits which stick out, I've read a lot of self-help books, and I read a lot of books for this podcast. Two bits which stick out are acceptance and responsibility. Can you explain acceptance in survival? Because it's a big bit of the book, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so acceptance to me is not accepting something to then give up on it. I suppose it's kind of, for me, acceptance is all about accepting the situation you're in, because once you accept something, the world opens up. The sort of blinkers are removed. I mean, for example, if you were trying to fight your way through a door, this locked door, you're hammering on it and you can't get through it, but you're so focused on it that it's all about getting through that door. But actually, once you accept, okay, I can't get through this door, and you step back, and suddenly, like, the blinkers are off, and you actually see there's a window next to the door that you can actually climb in through.
The bit that I like, though, was that, and I'm not, the idea that you're out in the wilderness, you're out in nature, up a mountain, or you're in a jungle, and you injure yourself. If you don't accept that quickly, you're going to die.
Yes.
Which is basically your book, which is what I loved so much, because it summed it up so much. So if something horrible happens to you, you accept it, you move on. Now, we've created this ridiculous human world where nature doesn't really exist anymore. And so the other day I got stopped for doing a little bit of speeding on my Vespa. I was only going a little bit over there. But your book came into my mind immediately, because it's like, it's happened, accept it and move on, rather than go, I'm a victim, I'm not really, and I thought that was the beauty, because it's true in nature, you die. If you get injured and you sit there thinking you're a victim, nature will kill you.
It's true, and I think you're when you're out in nature, if you're in that sort of survival situation, often you're on your own. I think the way society is now, it's almost like we're bubble wrapping people, and people are more willing to, or more able to play the victim, and with their, because they accept it, or they expect that somebody's going to come and rescue them and sort them out. So, it's everybody else's fault but your own. But if you keep fighting that, you're never going to move forwards. Yeah,
you talk about being a victim, don't you? And you're sitting there thinking, I'm a victim here, and it's like, it is what it is, get on with it. Yes,
yeah, the victim mentality is can totally destroy you.
Well, I suffer from it, I think. I think we all do, but your book made me realise that. Sorry, I'm being so gushing here, but it was really, because it's that thing of like, you've got to accept it, otherwise you're going to die, and that's normal life. But how did you get into this stuff in the first place? Sorry, can I just explain, because I don't think I've explained enough. What is your job? What's your job title? A survival expert?
Yeah, so I have several different titles. I mean, so what I do, I split my time at the moment between leading private expeditions, which is, I've kind of got to a stage now where people will call me up and say, where would you like to go? We want to do something really cool. What do you suggest? And I have to kind of pinch myself, because it's like, wow, I'm getting to go to these incredible places with these amazing people. And the other half, what I do is working behind the scenes on TV shows. So I will get sent out into a country to look for locations. I'll have spoken to a producer, and I'll know sort of the format of the show and what they're looking for. And I'll go out and I'll look for these things. I'll look for big stunts or challenges, and the survival element as well. So talk to maybe native peoples or local peoples to find out what they do hunting wise, or fishing techniques, survival techniques, and pull it together into a journey.
And you work with Bear Grylls on his TV stuff?
I do, yeah. I've been working with Bear for the past 10 years.
What's he like?
He's amazing. Like, he is so inspirational. He's just an incredible person to be part of the team.
Is he as good as you at survival?
Well, I mean, I've been working with him now for like 10 years, and everybody brings something to the team. I mean, like, if you're
not saying yes there, Megan. So yeah, I like him. I've interviewed him. He's really nice, isn't he?
Yeah.
What he brings as well to it is he's got a lot of charisma.
It's the enthusiasm, and it's infectious. And I mean, he is just, as a presenter, he's a phenomenal presenter, and he will drive the show. So his energy carries the show. I mean, we don't hang around. There's no second takes.
No.
Everything's done in one take.
And how dangerous is it? Because you put celebrities on these shows sometimes. How dangerous is it for the celebrities?
Well, I mean, we play with the perception of risk. So it's all about that. I mean, from the very nature of the terrain that we work in, you cannot remove the inherent risk. We are going to dangerous places. But part of my job is on the safety, is to actually go out there, and make sure that it's as safe as we can make it for celebrities that come in. Yeah, so it's actually the most dangerous bit is often like running around on like really steep terrain, whereas the viewer and the celebrity themselves would actually think that the most dangerous part is when we're doing the rope stunts and things. But actually, once they're attached to a rope, I can actually breathe a sigh of relief because it's very, very unlikely that the ropes will fail on them.
It's funny because I get asked to do these shows sometimes, and I'd love to do them. I've got a job, so generally I can't do it because I work a lot. But when you said in your book that it was really dangerous and you could actually die of being a celebrity doing it, you're not obviously you're saying you're minimizing the risk, but there's, because it's nature and the nature of nature, that you could, there's always something that could happen. It suddenly made me more excited to do it.
Really?
Because it's that element of when you watch a show and you think that crocodile's got its mouth wired shut, so there's no way it's going to bite you. When you know that as I'm not sure how the situation you say it's the perception.
I've never seen one wired shut. Their mouths are very free moving.
Don't they do that on not on your shows?
Maybe I'm a celebrity.
Yeah, I'm a celebrity. Don't they?
Yeah,
are their mouths shut? And I'm a. By the way, I don't know this. Don't sue me. They might. But they're. Let's move on from that, just in case I get myself in trouble. So how did you get into it in the first place then?
So it was through family holidays initially. Both my parents were really into the outdoors. They both came worked really, really hard to put themselves sort of through sort of a career in academia. And as the oldest one of four, I think they assumed that I was going to follow in their footsteps. So I was very much pushed into sort of the academic life. I didn't realise that there was anything outside of that. But I discovered mountain biking quite early on. I was drawn into the mountains. All our family holidays were out into the mountains. And I just found myself just obsessed with it. And within four walls, I found myself getting quite stressed. I couldn't sit still. I'd have this like bubble of panic inside my chest that would rise if I was sat inside for too long. I needed to be moving. And with mountain biking and then the mountains, I really found myself, and I was able to push myself physically and mentally, and exploring those boundaries was just something it was an incredible feeling.
I always find when I take my daughters, I've got twin daughters who are 15 and a younger one who's 4, whenever I take them out into the park or into the woods or anywhere like that, their whole attitude and demeanour changes, their excitement, and they just feel relaxed. They don't see it and they're always going, I don't want to go. But as soon as we get out there, they just seem to have fun and they smile and they do it. But they can't see it. Why? We go back to it. We have moved so far away from nature. Why have we, do you think?
Well, I think it's a human thing, isn't it? The grass is always greener, and there's, we as a species, are constantly trying to develop ourselves and better ourselves and sort of further ourselves, and technology, all these incredible things that we've achieved. When you think about what humans have actually achieved, it is phenomenal. Considering our biology and we're just a load of cells, it is incredible. But we haven't been living out of caves really that long when you sort of think about it. It's like evolution takes hundreds of thousands, millions of years to occur. How can we have actually evolved to live as we do now? It's there's something missing, and I really think nature, there's room in nature for creativity, there's room for initiative, and intuition comes into that as well. All these things that actually make up resilience and actually make us who we are as humans.
And you notice when you have when you put on expeditions and stuff, and you take out people, families or whatever, you notice that certain skills are being lost, don't you? And things like our motor neuron skills and things like that. You mentioned in your book that we're not actually very good at that anymore. Is that right?
Yeah, it's quite scary. It's a generalisation, but I've seen it particularly over the past 5 years. When I've been working with younger people in particular, that the motor coordination is being lost. And this is, if you're walking through the mountains, most of us would sort of take it for granted that you can pick the easiest line as you're walking down a rocky path. But some of these children just cannot do it. They can't coordinate their bodies enough to walk over rocky terrain, and it's quite dangerous because it means that they can't. There's no perception of risk, or what's dangerous. And I'm sure that's down partly to how we live now, in the fact that they spend a lot of time inside. Maybe they're playing computer games. And they're not actually getting outside and playing and developing those skills. When you climb trees as a kid and you'd fall out of them, you'd run and you'd trip over and you'd pick yourself up. But if kids aren't allowed to do that, how can they develop those skills?
Yeah, and the ability to think for themselves is something you mention as well in the book.
Yes, yeah, and that for me, I find that quite concerning, really. If the generations don't get out and play and understand risk and, understand the consequences of their actions, which is something nature teaches. Like how, when they come into sort of work and their children and things, we're just creating, humanity is going to lose their ability to understand risk, which puts us in a dangerous position, as a society, when you've got other cultures maybe that haven't lost that. Yeah,
we had Will Storr on recently, and he was discussing about our self-obsession that we've created for ourselves in our society, and we've created this false world. There's lots of ways to fail. I've gone through some really dark times, and if you are going through depression, you're listening to this, just get yourself out in nature, because there's no human man-made rules there. There's basically nature's rules. Just for a walk in the park or in the woods actually makes you feel a lot better. And I also think that what people don't understand, and through reading your book, you really get a sense of it. Nature's a really good stimulant, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah, it really is. And I think, you hit nail on the head there about going out and just going for a walk or going sitting in the park. I think there's a push at the moment. This has become quite fashionable and people want to become an adventurer. Again, I think that's, it's answering a call that's missing. But it then starts making people feel guilty for not getting out and doing these crazy adventures, whereas actually what I'm trying to achieve in my book, yes, I compare it to some of the crazy things that have happened to me out in the wilderness, but it's very much about encouraging people just to get out into nature. In your lunch break, go out and sit in the park, just go for a walk, go with the dog, go with the kids, and go and spend time in nature. It's not about having these epic adventures.
Yeah, well, so I had this argument with Mark not so long ago on this podcast, where I say man-made tourist attractions are just ridiculous. They're awful. Get yourself out in nature. It's much more fun. And he was going, and he was saying, no, they're not. And people were going, no, they're not. But Disney World and stuff is useless. You queue for hours for no reason, or Eiffel Tower or something. You queue, all of them. It's just not, you pay money and queue. You go in nature, you have fun, poof, like that. Economics of fun, it happens immediately. But your book, what it did is it made me excited about the planet. It also made me feel like a rubbish human being, because I don't think I'd survive a day out there. That's the problem. We're so far away, removed from it, that you need so many skills, and we're not taught them anymore. We wouldn't survive a day, would we?
I think that's the issue. If you think that you're not going to survive, then chances are you probably won't.
Right.
Yeah, it's all about, it's not, I think survivors don't even question that. When I looked into sort of what is resilience and what makes a survivor, those that survived, are often those that society wouldn't expect to. Children, stay-at-home mothers, that have ended up in these situations who's like stereotypically, wouldn't be considered as survivalists, but they've gone out there and they haven't given up. It's not even like a decision. It's just like, it's not even an option to give up. They just keep going and going. And you don't know how you're going to react until you're in that situation. And that's what I always tell people when people are like, oh, I could, I'm faced with some sort of life or death situation. And people are like, oh, I'd never have survived that. But you don't know you wouldn't until you're actually out there. How often in everyday life are you actually confronted with a life or death situation?
Yeah.
It's only when you're at those extremes that you realise like how strong you actually are. And I think that's where, the stories from the extremes actually come into everyday life. Because when you're out in nature, if you're pushing your limits and you're confronted with, like a few weeks ago, I was out in Kenya and got caught in the crossfire between a couple of tribes and some local rangers. In that situation, like you can't afford to lose your head. Like you have to keep your shit together. You have to keep it together. There's no other option.
Tell us about that incident. What happened?
So I was out there with with my partner. And another guy, and we were rigging a challenge. We had
by the way, your partner Stanny.
You
talk about him in the book. He's still he's a survival expert as well, isn't he?
Yes, we're very lucky we get to work together a lot. But we were rigging a stunt across a gorge, and there's a river running through the bottom of this gorge, and there's actually man-eating crocodiles in there. As a couple of days ago, a couple of the locals had actually been eaten. So I was on one side. I'd been rigging on one side, and the guys had been rigging on the other. And I just finished off what I was doing. I was taking photos of the rigging so that when we came in to film the next day, I could rig really quickly. And suddenly it was like something out of a Hollywood movie, like the sand just exploded next to me and this sort of volley of gunfire went off around me. So I dived into this little alcove and was sat in there for a few minutes with these sort of rounds going off. And then I realised that the fire was coming towards me. And the best thing for me to do was to actually get over to the other side where the guys were, where they were actually inside a cave. So I legged it down, like kind of slid down the cliffs into the river at the bottom, like legging it through the river. Please don't eat me. Up the other side, and up into the cave where the guys were waiting. And we spent about 15 minutes in there with the rounds ricocheting off the roof of the cave before we could get out of there. And what happened was that we were out there when the really bad droughts were happening, and the humans and animals were being drawn to the watercourses there.
Right.
And the one tribe had stolen like hundreds of goats from another tribe. And this tribe had obviously gone after them to get them back. And the local rangers had laid an ambush directly above where we were working in this gorge. And it had all just kicked off just above where we were.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really haven't done the book justice yet, actually, by the way, because it's a fantastic self-help book, but it's also an amazing adventure book as well. There's so many exciting things which happen in there to you. And it's also a book about sort of like, in a way, sort of Indiana Jones book type thing, or all your little adventures you have, but also the way that you survive things as well, and little tips of how to survive. But the danger element of it is huge. And after reading the book, I started noticing that a lot of people die in nature all the time, and even recently, that British climber Andrew Foster, even a couple of days ago, was crushed to death. He was in Yosemite National Park. Did you hear about him?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
He was a climber, and, I think he's an experienced climber, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And then just so happened that some rocks slid off and he ended up getting crushed to death. There's serious danger out there all the time, isn't there?
Yeah, I think you have to have respect for nature, but obviously these stories hit the newspaper because they're unusual, and people find them interesting. But, the reality, how many people die in London every day from, getting hit by a car or crossing the road and things. So I don't. These stories shouldn't put people off going out. It's just get the right training.
I just think it's that great realization of how dangerous it is, because we've become so used to nothing should ever affect us at all.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you do look at nature, every single animal out there is either being trying to eat something or being eaten itself, isn't it? Constantly.
It is true. Yeah.
And we are that part of nature. I was looking at that Financial Times journalist that sounds horrific, who was eaten by the crocodile. Did you hear about that recently?
Yes.
Because you're always you always listen to TV and stuff, and they say, no, lions are fine, sharks are fine, everything's fine. And I always look at it and think, no, they're not. They're predators. They want to eat us. And everyone goes, no, they're more scared of you. No, they're not. Sharks, if you're in the water, don't go and pet a shark, because it is going to give you a little nibble. Tell us about the time that you nearly got eaten by lions. I never thought I'd say that in an interview. It is brilliant. Tell us about the time you nearly got eaten by lions, Megan.
I come across like big predators in quite a few of the environments that I'm in. This time I was out. I was actually working for a Swiss TV show, and we'd been out there for about 2.5 weeks out of a 3-week show, and literally dropped into the Namibian desert with nothing. I was looking after one guy who was being filmed. And every night we're going out there, and we've got no sleeping bags, got no tents. You're just sleeping on the sand. So you get a fire going, and at night in the desert it gets pretty chilly. So this one night we'd done the same as we did every night. Made our little camp, so little scrapes in the sand, cleared away any stones, built our little fire, and settled down for the night. That night, for some reason, I couldn't get hold of the crew, like the film crew, on the radio. But it was I didn't really think too much about it. It wasn't anything I could do about it at that moment anyway. And we went to sleep. And at some point in the night, I just woke up. It's as if somebody jumped out on me. It was a sort of hit of adrenaline, that fight or flight thing. I was like, right, what is this? So I kind of rolled my head to the side, and there was a huge male lion just outside of the firelight, sort of walking backwards and forwards, just so silent. So it's really fascinating. And I wonder what it was that triggered me to wake up in that way. And so I woke this guy up next to me, and we got some wood back onto the fire, blew it up into flames so it was a bit larger, and spent the rest of the night actually sort of watching this lion. He was joined by 2 lionesses, and they were there probably. It felt like hours. They probably were there for a couple of hours. It felt like a lot longer than that at the time. Yeah, but you realise how insignificant you are. But going through that situation,
why didn't they attack you? Because of the fire, you said.
Yeah, I really believe it was because of the fire.
Why are lions scared of fire?
Animals are in general. They have a respect for it. It's it's something, it destroys their habitats, particularly in dry environments where you might get a strike of lightning that then like decimates like a plain or a forest. So they have this inbuilt respect for it.
You talk a lot about sixth sense, maybe, or intuition. What do you call it? You call it intuition, do you? Or instinct, whatever.
Intuition. Or the sixth sense, yeah. And I think, this is something I know that a lot of people say this doesn't exist, but what I see that as it's a change in the environment. I think scientists now say it's like 95% of your sort of brain function is unconscious. That's only a tiny percent that's actually conscious. So there's a huge amount of stuff going on, and the reason why so much of the sort of what's going on is unconscious is because it's dealing with all these stimuli coming in from the outside world that would totally overload and burn out your conscious brain if it was aware of it. So sometimes I think signals get sent through to the conscious brain that aren't fully formed. So there's something within the environment that's changed. Like in the UK, I know when like a rainstorm's coming because all the leaves kind of change the way that they kind of flip over and they kind of make a different noise. And if you're aware of that, people are aware of that, but you wouldn't necessarily consciously pinpoint that.
And we've stopped becoming aware of our...
Yes, yeah, but there'll be things in everyday life, in the environment that you're used to working in, whether it's an office environment or factory setting, that things you'll use your intuition because there'll be something in that environment that's changed that stops you doing something or tells you to stop doing something. And I think it's really, really important to listen to that little voice. Yeah,
interesting. All through your book, you've got loads of different examples of this, but the one thing that you keep stipulating is listen to yourself. Yes. Listen to what you think, and if you think something's wrong, stop and listen to it is the point you say.
I think it's so important. I think that's something that's being lost from everyday life, is that ability to be able to think for yourselves and take ownership. It's like that victim mentality again.
Yeah, and again, in most people's normal day life, it doesn't matter whether you listen to it or not because we're so protected as humans. We've created this society where nothing happens to us. Whereas in nature, why I like your book is it's not prejudice, is it? Nature will kill you whether you're rich, poor, what race you are. There's no prejudice whether you're a man or a woman. It just will kill you.
Yeah, it really does. It really totally does not discriminate between male, female, coloured. There's just it doesn't matter. It's all about how you go into it, like mentally. And survival is, initially is about luck. Whether it's a terror attack or whether it's, you're caught in an avalanche. The initial bit is luck as to whether you've actually survived that situation. But after that, like once you've got yourself into a safe position, then it becomes about all down on you and self-reliance.
We talked about lions biting your head off or trying to bite your head off, something like that. But also, you've also been bitten by snakes and scorpions as well. So you're not bitten by scorpions, are you? You're stung by them.
Yeah.
Stung them. Chance of dying from that must have been pretty high if it was the wrong one.
Yes, scorpions not so much unless you're allergic to them.
Oh, they're all right, are they?
not all of them, no, but...
Is it painful?
It is really painful. Like being stung by a scorpion is like being stung by like 100 bees at one time.
Oh,
it was
really?
It was excruciating, yeah.
And snake as well, you've been bitten by a snake?
Yeah, the snake, that was my fault in that I was handling it. And in the past, like when I first started working in TV, we did some crazy stuff, and a part of what I was doing was animal wrangling, which thinking back on it now is like, what the fuck? Like I really shouldn't have been doing that. And you get quite complacent, and I was handling this snake. It was out in America, and I had it in my hands, and it turned and it just attached itself to my hand.
Right.
And I had in my brain, I actually was able to see it like dislocate its jaw, and I actually thought, "Wow, that's cool," as it like clamped onto my hand. But I wasn't sure, because it looked very similar to a deadly snake, and I wasn't sure which one it was. I wasn't 100% sure of whether it's a coral snake or a king cobra. I didn't know at the time, so it was a moment of whoops.
There's this weird thing on TV where TV producers always go, let's get humans to handle dangerous animals. And then it's like, oh, look, they're really scared. Yeah, you're supposed to be scared because you're handling something which should kill you. But I always, because I sometimes have it on my show and they go, hey, you're allowed to pick up the spider. I always say to the wranglers or the owners or whatever, do they like being picked up? And they're like, no. Animals don't really want to be touched.
No, they don't.
I think it's this mad thing that we want to hang out with them and touch them and stuff. They don't really want to.
No, they don't. And it's like, these tiny little, like, deadly spiders or deadly snakes. They're not interested in us because we're not prey to them. We're too big for them really to eat. So they're terrified of us, and it's their defense mechanism, and they're employing it. And it's like snakes actually. It's young snakes that are actually the more dangerous because they can't control their venom. It's the older snakes tend to do like a dummy hit first, like as a warning, because it takes them it uses so much energy to actually create venom within like their venom sacs that they don't want to burn that up. So their initial strike is usually like is a warning strike, and then the second one's usually like the envenomation. The
planet is your plaything, so I imagine you've gone everywhere in the world. We talk about the dangerous animals there. I imagine the thing which is more dangerous though are mosquitoes, malaria, and the small things. That's the thing which are more likely to kill you, isn't it?
Yeah, so that and exposure. So exposure to the environment, but definitely bugs and bacteria, protozoa. This is why I always tell people, you shouldn't be drinking straight out of the streams. I mean, even in like the UK, you really should be treating your water first. Yeah, chances are you'll be fine, but you might get nailed by some horrendous bacteria or protozoa that takes a long time to get out of your system.
So what do you do about malaria? Have you done treatments, or do you just?
So malaria. I have had malaria, and it's really horrible. And at that time, I mean, I wasn't taking antimalarials because at the time I'd literally been jumping from one jungle to another, and they were suggesting that I take different antimalarials, and it didn't work with the drugs. So I always carry with me the drugs to actually be able to treat malaria should I contract it. Unfortunately, I did contract it at that time, and it was pretty horrendous. I've also had Lyme disease as well.
You mentioned that in the book. That's quite a hideous disease, isn't it?
It's horrendous. We
can get that over here.
Yeah, I picked it up in the Lake District. I'd been working up in the Lake District and picked it up. And again, like, it's not about scaremongering and like freaking people out. I mean, the chance of getting it are quite slim, but it's just being aware of these things.
Well, the thing is, it's quite easy to heal, isn't it? But it's just, you've got to do it straight away. You didn't bother.
Yeah, I didn't realise how serious it was, and I was in my late teens, and I was too focused on going climbing than I'd be curled up at the bottom of the crag with like these intense headaches, which I never had, and then the headaches would pass and I'd climb and push myself, and I've just forced it into my central nervous system, and it took a long time to come back out again.
What's fascinating about your book is your thought process through everything. You mentioned it earlier. Things like hypothermia are going to kill you quickly, aren't they? Extreme weathers and getting cold. One of your big things is, you mentioned the book, everyone always says get water, but actually sometimes it's getting heat or getting warmth from fire is an important thing. Yeah,
I mean, I always get asked, like, what's the most important? Because we always talk about the priorities of survival, like fire, food, shelter and water. And people always ask me which one you should do first. And it totally depends on which environment that you're in. If you find yourself on some super sunny, like, desert island, you're going to want shade, you want shelter, and you'll want to find some clean water to drink. But if you're dropped off into the snow, maybe it's finding like an insulated shelter or getting a fire going. Yeah, it's totally dependent on your situation. It's so exciting reading your book. And then I got to the bit about you nearly being shot when you're in... you stumbled across an opium field by mistake. I was thinking, maybe it's not as much fun. Can you just tell us a bit about that story? Because it's quite interesting. So I was out in actually northern Thailand, and again, like, I'd just literally been dropped off into the jungle with nothing. I had a machete and a medical pack to look after the guy that I was with. We were filming, and just been walking through the jungle, like doing our thing, like doing some survival bits and pieces as we went along. And then suddenly, like, we were going up this really steep sort of escarpment, and suddenly the trees clear, and we're on the edge of this huge opium field. And it took my brain a minute, because I wasn't expecting it. It took my brain just a few seconds to it be like, what the hell, what's this? Like, and actually be like, oh shit. And suddenly, like, thankfully the guys were the other side of this field, and came running towards us with these rifles. So we just turned and we just had to run. Yeah. Yeah, but you explain it well in the book, because the terror of running and staying quiet, and also the people you're with, trying to get them all. It's the realization that these people are going to kill you because it's easier than trying to
sort of erase your memory or something.
So there's a very
kill
quick,
you.
Yeah, I mean, there was a very quick realization that that we actually did have to run there because, I mean, in those situations, the opium farmers don't want to be found. If the police find them or if the army go in and they'll destroy everything there. They'll shoot anybody on sight. They burn all the crops. So for us, they don't want anybody else to know that they're there.
Yeah. So
our lives were at risk because they wouldn't want it getting out that they'd got these opium things because they're these are valuable plants. So for us, it was the decision to actually turn and run was the best decision to make. And I mean, we thankfully had time on our side because the guys were on the other side of the field, so it would take them a little while to get over to us.
Yeah.
So we ran and they were running behind us. And I mean, that was a terrifying situation. But again, like in that situation, because I was responsible for the people that I was with, I had a guy who was being filmed and I had 3 members of a crew with me as well. And I had to get them out of there and had to get them moving. So again, it's then separating out those emotions, putting them into this box and dealing with the here and now and actually getting them out of there.
That's what you're very good at, isn't it? And that's the lesson in the book is like, it's happening. Get on with it.
Yeah,
it's kind of it's acceptance again, isn't it?
Yeah, and I find like I get asked a lot, like, what's the most dangerous situation that you've been in? And I find it really hard. And I actually found when I was writing my book, I actually found the stories the hardest bit to remember, the hardest bit to put in, because for me, I've dealt with those emotions. Like I don't remember, the dealing with the opium farmers there, or the lions, or I did another job in Mexico where we were hunted by drug cartel. I don't remember those things very well. I don't remember them with any sort of emotion because I didn't deal with them with emotion at the time.
Interesting, actually, because when you're in a disaster, apparently you have 2 ways of reacting. One, you feel you're a superhero because you survived it, or you feel you're a victim and you go. You keep reliving it over and over. Apparently, I know nothing about this, but apparently that's what happens. Clearly, you enjoy it all. Why do you enjoy it so much? This adventure, do you know?
Because it's addictive.
Is it?
Yeah. For me, I suppose it's. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's like a drug. I find it very, very hard now to be in like coming back into everyday life. I find it quite mundane. Like I need that, which is probably not very healthy. And I'd love to I'd love to be like analysed by somebody to actually figure out why it is that I deal with things in a certain way.
Yeah, I can't reiterate enough. If you're feeling miserable, my friend who's a Marine, one day he ex-Marine, he's got injured, so he had to get out of it all and everything. But he takes people on treks up mountains and things. And he said to me one day, "Right, I'm taking you out because you're looking miserable." We went out for a really long walk. It was exhausting. We were getting water from a stream, and he was sticking. because you can get brilliant tools now to they put light into the water,
UV,
the UV light. He's got all the gear and everything like that, and he made it. It was brilliant because he made us. He gave me a kit list, and he said, "We're going up Snowdon," and he goes, "You need a kit list because the British weather changes all the time, and every year now I notice that people get caught up there because British weather's brilliant as it's changes non-stop." But we end up sleeping in a cave for the night up a mountain, and it was just brilliant. I came down a different person. It sounds so stupid, but suddenly to be in nature and do something exciting like that and sleep in a cave, it's just amazing.
It totally doesn't sound stupid. I mean, that's a reaction that I see a lot from my clients and from people that go outside. I think it's that it's confidence building as well. It's self-confidence.
I would take that over a 5-star hotel somewhere any day of the week because it is just amazing. The experience, you just feel, wow, I'm back. It's just being back in nature, back where we're supposed to be, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I think often it's in hindsight, at the time you might be struggling through, you're soaking wet, it's horrendous and get me out of here. But actually it's afterwards when you look back and it's like, bloody hell, I just did that.
Yeah.
And it gives you that sense of, confidence in yourself. It's like, But
it's self-worth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think that's and trust in yourself and knowing what you're capable of. I've just come back from a paragliding trip out in the Pyrenees, and I know that I find it when I'm flying through turbulence, I find that still quite terrifying. But for me, when I come back, when I'm up there, I'm just like, bloody hell, I want to get my feet on the ground. But actually, afterwards, it's it's making me stronger as a person. And I think it's the same, with anything that you deal with in everyday life as well, losing loved ones, going through a divorce, all of these things. Yes, it is awful when you're going through it. But it does make you
That's
stronger.
why I said to you, and I keep saying to you, I wish I'd read your book 10 years ago, because the simplification of accept it is just brilliant. Otherwise, nature will kill you. Just accept your situation and get on with it. And you know, I've been miserable a bit over the last 10 years, and it's a good way of doing it. Now, I got... people laughed at me when I was on Sunday brunch one day because I couldn't move my arm. And the reason why I couldn't move my arm was I was walking along with my child, who was 3 at the time, I think, and she was becoming a bit of a lump, and she refused to walk. And I thought, right, I'll pick her up. And I had shopping in one hand and her in the other. And I thought, okay, what if I was walking out of a desert? Could I do this to get back to the car? I'm going to walk her out. Right? I was in absolute pure agony as my arm was aching, and I was doing that. And I was having this fantasy that I was walking out of a desert with my daughter, trying to survive. Everyone laughed at the idea of that. But when reading through your book, I also do this thing where I go with my kids and say, hey, look, let's pretend the zombies have come. There's a zombie apocalypse. What are we going to do? And they go, Dad, really? I go, come on, first we're going to get up one of these trees, right, so we can observe and see. And they like look at me like I'm nuts. You do that stuff all the time, don't you?
Yeah, totally. I call it like scenario planning.
But you're planning zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, but it's
why not?
No, exactly. But it's like, it's all like partly, I mean, it's all about actually like, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's all about becoming the hero of your own life. You know, it's, how do you prepare for these like crazy scenarios, you know, for the unexpected? And the only way that you can do that, rather than actually being putting yourself into those situations, is to trick your brain into thinking that it's been through it all before. And that's what I do on expeditions. I mean, particularly on longer ones where, you know, I'm out there for weeks on end, and it's like I need to keep my brain active. It's like I'll play these scenarios. So it might be as simple as, you know, walking along and, you know, my client falls off the edge of the path. It's like, how would I get them back up? What if they've got a broken leg? How do I then get them back onto the path? You know, we're 24 hours from help. How am I going to deal with this? Down to like the crazy like alien invasions or zombie apocalypses. But it, you know, it keeps my brain active.
Yeah, but you sit with your boyfriend working out how to survive things, don't you?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's like, you know, going through airports and things. We shouldn't say those things, but going through airports, it's like, you know, what have I actually got on me now? Like, you know, I haven't been able to take my lighter through. I haven't been able to take my knife. You know, what have I got on me right now that I could actually, like, you know, make a fire, or I could survive, or, you know, I could defend myself. And those things are like, that's really cool. Like when you actually start seeing things as not just like, you know, like a water bottle isn't just a water bottle. You know, it's got so many other things you could use it for as well. And actually, that's a really good thing to play with younger children as well.
Yeah.
Like either take them into nature, or, you know, put an item in front of them, because their boundaries aren't as sort of structured as ours.
Yeah.
Like the world's still quite fluid to them, and you learn so much from them.
What is your relationship like with food? Is it because do you just have a relationship where food is fuel for you, or do you actually enjoy it?
Yeah, so I've never had, like, food's always just been fuel for me.
Right.
Like I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't enjoy the occasional like trip to like going out for a restaurant and things, but it's never really been like important for me. I'm not a great chef. Like I love cooking over the fire, but at home I'm kind of one pot wonder of things. Yeah.
What about food in the wild? Obviously you'd eat anything that will give you calories to keep you going, but it's obviously quite dangerous, isn't it, eating? And
it is, yeah. Totally would not go. Yeah, I wouldn't go round just randomly like eating mushrooms or berries or anything really, unless you know exactly what it is, because some of that, particularly if you're a long way from help, you know, that stuff can kill you. And
there's a brilliant bit in your book where you talk about the Mayans and the Aztecs, and they were the people who tested food were martyrs when they died. Yeah, so they had people in their like societies that would actually, you know, test things for food or for medicinal properties as well, and they were considered martyrs if they died for the greater cause. But you know, if you think about those rule of threes that you mentioned that's at the beginning of my book, it's like your body can go for around 3 weeks without food. I mean, that's the extreme end. You're not going to be in a good state if you haven't eaten for 3 weeks, but that's quite a long period of time. You know, rescue might come in 24 hours, 48 hours. You don't necessarily need to be eating like random berries and things. Let's talk about responsibility. I said at the beginning it was about accepting and about responsibility. This is another thing that we struggle with. I think everybody does. My kids do. it's taking ownership of your decisions, isn't it, really, and taking ownership of where you are and what you've got yourself into. Obviously, it's different in our lives to being out in a jungle or a mountain. Can you explain what you mean by it in your book?
So I think, again, this is partly to do with like the victim mentality as well, but it's like taking ownership of decisions. I think in everyday life now, our lives are quite structured. We have certain things that society says that we need to achieve, like family, good job, finances, even material possessions, house, car, all of these things. And those are the things that, that we're kind of working towards without really questioning. And those things are actually quite fragile. When you look at like after a natural disaster, or war or whatever it might be, those things are lost very, very quickly. So I think every part of our lives we should take ownership over and take responsibility and own everything that we do, because I think we'll be much happier as well if you know that everything in life is because you've worked for it and you own those decisions.
I think it's getting harder to be responsible for your life because as humans, as our society, we've created so many laws and rules. So someone's telling you what to do a lot of the time anyway. You're not just acting for yourself. We've got all sorts of laws, and then we've got our governments, we've got things. So we're losing responsibility a lot. And I think getting back to actually taking responsibility for your own life and getting away from what society tells you to do. That doesn't mean become a criminal, by the way. that means just thinking about everything for what you want to do and what you want to achieve without going with what the mass thinks. I think is a good way of thinking. I think especially with the materialistic world we live in at the moment.
I think so. I think it's questioning everything as well, because there's a reason why. Sort of if you think about like sort of prepperism and preparing for apocalyptic situations and things, with the state of the world at the moment, like with the politics and things, who knows what's going to happen over the next few years. And I think we need to question. You need to question everything. Just because somebody says this is the way it is doesn't mean that it is. I
get in trouble for that a lot, though. And I bore Mark with it non-stop when he comes up. I've got another theory, Mark. So he just rolls his eyes at me. Interesting, you said something a little bit earlier, because I talk about this on the podcast as well, be the lead character in a movie. You talk about that in your book. You've just mentioned it now. I say this on the podcast. I've been saying it for a long time to people who write in and say, I've got a problem, something to do with my ex or something. And I'm like, take them out of the movie and make yourself the lead character again. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's an amazing bit of advice. And it is important because, I don't think you can move on. I don't think you can live your life if, like you say, if somebody else is the lead character, it has to be you. And it's, it's easier said than done. It's really hard, like particularly, if you're subject to domestic abuse and things, long term, you lose your sense of self. And I think that's where it comes down to. It's actually building up, who you are. Yeah. And I don't think there's a huge amount of room for that creativity in everyday life now, for young people to actually discover who they are and what they want to be.
Let's talk about you being a woman. You're a great female role model. I've said to you, I can't remember I mentioned it earlier on in this podcast, but I want my children to read your book because I think it's a really important book. You are in a male-dominated industry, I imagine.
Yes, I always have been. But I think, for me, it's never really been about my gender. It's, I suppose, when I was growing up, I just had this inherent need to push boundaries and just do my own thing and explore. So although, yes, I've always been out and it's usually just myself with a load of guys, like it's never really registered until more recently when people keep saying to me, oh wow, you're the only woman, or that must be really tough. Like it hasn't. I just get on with it because that's what drives me. I find it tough like when I'm working in cultures where women aren't equal, and when I started leading expeditions to countries like that, I found it really hard because my ego would get in the way because I want to be listened to and I want people to do what I ask them to do and things. But I very quickly realised that actually I'm in somebody else's culture. I have to respect that and I have to find a way of dealing with that. So maybe using a male client or a male colleague to achieve what I need to achieve. And it can be frustrating.
How do clients treat it though? They're turning up for a survival trip, an expedition, and they're expecting Bear Grylls, some fella, and then you're there. How do they react to you?
Sometimes have guys trying to push boundaries. I used to teach off-road driving, and that I think particularly was...
Oh, men love to think they can drive, don't they? Oh, God.
And they really can't. Yeah, and it's like so often like...
Oh, that'd be brilliant. I'd love to watch that.
Like, particularly on like, those corporate dues or like, some stag party where you've got these guys behind like, like a really powerful like 4-wheel drive vehicle, like, and you're actually taking them over really technical terrain. And initially in those situations, like initially it'd be like, oh, what do you know? Like, we're just going to put our foot down and go really, really fast. So I'd like the first challenge I would take them to was this like really awkward one. It's all about like control and being able to control the vehicle. And like inevitably they'd put their foot down and hammer it and they'd get stuck. And then it would just be, I'd let them rev and let them rock backwards and forwards in this vehicle for a bit. And then at some point I'd just be like, right, well, this is what you need to do.
That would be brilliant.
That was my like, fuck you. Like,
yeah. What's the difference between your boyfriend does the same job? What is the difference, the way you're both treated then? Is there any competition between the two of you? And what is the difference between being a man in the industry and a woman in the industry?
I suppose like within the outdoor industry, it's a bit different within the film industry, because I don't know of any other women that do the role that I do. It is expected that it's going to be male and often ex-military. And there's a certain way that, that these guys look and things. So initially it was quite hard, I think, for me to get that recognition, and people would defer to him rather than talking to myself, but talking to me. But I think more recently, because I've been in the industry quite a long time now, and it's quite a small world, and people know me and how I work. We do work in different ways. When we're leading an expedition together, or working on a job, he's much more direct in his way of leadership style, in terms of like, this is how it is, this is going to be how it is done. Whereas I'm much more I lead with a much more sort of emotional way. I tend to reach people like on an emotional level, because I feel that people are going to achieve a lot more if they're part of the decision-making process, and if they're part of, that they'll take ownership over getting to the summit, and then it's all about using their emotions to get them there. So that's kind of my leadership style, unless I have to shout at people, which I do occasionally.
Well, if you read the book, you become quite a good people person, as in judging them, haven't you?
Yes.
You're quite good at working out what's happening with people as soon as you meet them, to work out how they can survive.
I have to, and I think also particularly being a woman as well. It's another way around that. From the very first moment I meet somebody, if it's an airport or wherever it might be, is that I'm assessing like how they move. Like, are they going to be an issue in terms of fitness, in terms of coordination? You can tell very much from what somebody's wearing when they turn up to do an expedition.
Oh, okay. Like, what do you think about Mark and myself? How would we be on a survival trip, do you think?
Well, I think
that pause is far too long. I'm not happy with that at all. No, that is not good, is it, Mark?
No, I think it's the movement and things.
Okay,
it's like how
Mark,
coordinated.
All right, I've got an interesting question for you. Right, reading the book, you seem to have utmost respect for tribes.
Yeah.
And you also say that a lot of females are equipped for bushcraft because the guys were just going out hunting and the women were actually doing all the business, learning how to do it, doing stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, in on the whole, in tribes, women tend to do lots and lots of different, like, I suppose, smaller tasks, whereas the men would have like either be to defend or to hunt.
Right. So the point you're making in the book is it's not necessarily men who are going to be the best survivalist women, that either could do it. In those tribes, though, they seem to have very gender-defined roles. They're still quite sexist. There's not a lot of equality going on, Megan, in tribes. What do you think about that? Because we're obviously moving a million miles away from that. Yeah,
I think within those tribes, like, women still have a very powerful role.
Yeah.
I think, yes, we are changing, but and I think this is why it's so fascinating, like, at the moment. And I think that women now have such an interesting role, because I always get asked about sort of feminism and that sort of thing. And actually, like, for us now, I think all women at the moment are like trailblazing in their own way, because it hasn't been that long since the suffragettes and equality came about. Women now want independence, like financially, socially. They want to have careers. They they want to have, we want to have what men have, but at the same time, we're still stuck with wanting the same, sort of those traditional values of, maybe marriage, of, having a family, and they haven't quite, I don't feel they've quite meshed together.
Oh yeah, no,
yet.
well, I did a documentary on that. It's 100% true. However, because I'm really into equality, really think it's important. I've got 3 daughters. As I say, I think you're amazing for what you're doing. But it's the tribe bit really got to me, because I thought they've got a very interesting. They're very close to nature. We're not, and yet they're keeping gender-defined roles. So it confused me. I was going, that kind of doesn't go with what my belief process is.
No, but it is interesting actually. There's been quite a lot of movement now within sort of people outside of tribes coming in and actually giving money to women and having the women control it from the inside out a bit more. So I was just working out in Kenya, and the local tribe, one of the local tribes there, like the women were coming into this place to make their beads, sort of their beaded jewellery, and they were getting a wage for it, but only half of it was going to their husbands. The husbands weren't aware of the fact that the women were actually retaining the other half of it.
Right.
And that was then to invest into the village, invest into more beads to be able to make more money. So the women were actually taking control in a different way.
I was out in Zambia, and I saw a lot of stuff. It was out there for doing some charity stuff, and I saw a lot of initiatives with charity, and my favourite one was this woman who had started an orphanage, and there was not really that much security, but she'd managed to get the security of that place locked down, the respect in where we were, which wasn't the greatest area, and a lot of the kids have been orphaned because people were dying of HIV, and I was just like, you need to empower people like her. This is the important thing, because she's actually taking responsibility, and that's where the money should be going.
Yeah. It's so fascinating with all of that. But yeah, you can't change like thousands of years of development overnight. Yeah,
talking about being a woman though, you're about to go on a solo trip to Alaska.
Yes, yeah.
And you've had to actually contemplate the idea that you might have to kill another human.
Yeah.
You're laughing at that, Megan.
Well, but I think, those things, I've with the jobs I do and things, I've seen more firearms on the streets. I've been in situations, where it's been other people that have put my life in danger. And we're so removed from that.
I don't want to give away all the books. I'm not going to, because you've got to read it. But there was one situation that you felt, if these people weren't getting paid at the end of the day, to collecting their money,
I wouldn't have come back.
You wouldn't have come back.
Yeah.
Read the book for that story, because it's good. So as a woman, you get yourself put in that situation sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
But you're solo Alaska, and you've got to kill humans. Continue.
Yeah. Well, it's like going off into the wilderness areas like that and looking at, wherever it might be in the world. If you're going off into remote areas and you're meeting other people, there's a reason why that those other people might be out there on their own. And it's a real risk. We're taught in our society and everyday life that we need to be polite to other people and respect other people and be very politically correct, which I totally agree on in the society that we live in. But if you step outside of that society, that's where, our Western values don't mean so much, and life doesn't mean as much. And actually, you need to be aware of that. If you're going to be traveling in these other cultures, that your life is not valued in the same way that it is at home. And what are you going to do about it if it comes to push comes to shove? Yeah.
And so you've had to have that. You talked about preparation earlier and scenarios. So you've actually had to sit there, get that in your head, work it out, so if it actually happens, you're prepared.
Yeah, it's something that I do think about, and I regularly do things like firearms training, not so that I can pick up that I would actively carry a firearm, but so that if I come across, I'm in a situation where I need to disarm one or defend myself, that I can.
You're going to have to do it, because the risk is real. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, is that risk real? And then I pick up a paper, and it's really, it's very serious and sad news that solo kayaker Emma Kelty, she got murdered in the Amazon recently, didn't she? Did you read about that?
I haven't read that one, no.
Oh, so she was in the Amazon. She was kayaking.
Right.
And some local people apparently said, look, it's quite dangerous where you're going, but she was running out of time.
Yeah.
And so she went and she got robbed and murdered. And
That's
so she was
horrendous.
doing it on her own. Yeah. So the risks are real, aren't they?
I think so. And I think like social media has a lot to answer for as well. And I think we need to be very, very careful as this sort of like adventurer thing rises, which is a brilliant thing because it's encouraging people to get outside. But, you know, those perfect Instagram photos and, you know, things that you see on Facebook, you know, there's a story behind them. You know, the people that are putting up those pictures are only giving you like a tiny little snapshot of, you know, the preparation that goes into the expedition and, you know, the training and, you know, the experience that that person has. And actually, you know, traveling to these environments, yes, you see it on TV and it looks all glamorized, but the reality of it is these are very harsh places that you're traveling, and to be aware of the fact, like I said, that human life is not valued in the same way and you are a target.
What do you think of politics then? I don't want to go into your political views over here, but what do you think of, you know, global politics, the world? You must have a different view on it to the rest of us because you're out in these countries seeing different things.
I've definitely, like, while I've been traveling, I've definitely been feeling a lot more unrest. It's just like it's a feeling that I pick up. It's like this kind of thing bubbling under the surface. Which really worries me. And I've seen, like I said, I've seen more firearms on the streets. I've seen a lot more sort of unrest, and that worries me. And I think we live in a little bubble over here. And you know, the way, and that's my concern with this sort of losing that sort of ability to be, you know, to assess risk and to take ownership of our own decisions, because there are other cultures out there which are getting quite powerful that don't live in the same way. You know, they're not bubble wrapped. You know, it is about survival of the fittest.
We've moved ourselves, as I keep saying, away from nature. That fight or flight thing, we've actually completely got rid of that. Are we not preparing ourselves for the world, do you think?
Well, I don't think we're allowed to. I think we're kept within these little bubbles and things. I know recently there was actually those things with, like, you know, the knives. You now can't buy knives online. And which is like jeopardizing like the careers of bladesmiths, which is like a really ancient art. And, you know, people who are buying like hundreds of pounds worth of like handmade knife are not the people who are going to be going into schools and stabbing people. And I just think, you know, those things, it's like actually removing people's ability to be able to make decisions and to, you know, take responsibility in buying knives and things. It just seems, well, to me, it doesn't make any sense.
What I mean, though, is as a culture, Britain, are we, as all our leaders and everything, are we getting ourselves quite far removed away from what other cultures in the world are actually thinking and doing? As you say, they've got a completely different set of values to us sometimes. Are we not aware of what's happening, do you think?
I think so. On the whole, I mean, yeah, if you travel a lot, then yes, you are going to be aware of that. But the majority of people don't travel. You know, they don't have that opportunity.
Do you sometimes sit at dinner parties and go, God, this lot just don't know what's going on?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I do. And yeah, I don't want to, it's not about scaremongering, but I think it's taking, you know, it's taking ownership of decisions, questioning everything in the world around you and not taking anything for granted, because it can be taken away from you so quickly. Yeah, it's true. Apparently there were 9 different sorts of human beings at one stage on this planet, and we're the ones who survived, according to someone I was talking to the other day. What happened to the other 8? So, you know, it all could be taken away from us. I could just interview you forever, but we can't carry on forever. You have to read the book. We've got 5 questions that I've moved it to 5 now, Mark. I'm going to 5 questions now we ask everybody, and so I'm going to start with the first one. What advice were you given that has been invaluable to your life? I think one of the key bits that I was given from my first boss actually was that he can teach me the skills, but he can't teach your personality. And that's kind of stuck with me. So yeah, anybody can learn skills, but you can't teach somebody your personality. So, you know, think about the ways that you interact with other people and what you want out of life.
How often are you scared?
Oh, well, when I'm at work, probably on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, and
you just deal with it, though.
Yeah,
that's the
deal
thing.
with it. Yeah,
and you get excited about dealing with it. That's one of the things
yes.
you like.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's a control thing.
But that's your achievement, isn't it? Something's happened to me, but I controlled it, and that's it was fine. And that's comes across in the book a lot, that you can actually analyse.
Well, you have to control it. I mean, I actually honestly find it harder within an urban environment to be able to control fear and things, because it's not my environment, and there's so many stimuli. It's like travelling on the tube. It's like so much stimulation all the time, and it's like constantly assessing people's body language and things. It's exhausting.
Yeah. You're like maybe like a Buddhist monk or something, though, the way that you are dealing with your emotions. It's a bit like it is, though, isn't it? Because when something's happening, you quickly go, right, it's happened. That's what mindfulness is constantly, is telling people to look at what they're thinking.
Yeah, and I think you have to. And I mean, in those situations, I don't have a choice. It automatically goes into that. I have to deal with what I'm dealing with now. Again, why
your book is so brilliant. I don't have a choice because I could die. Whereas in our world, we don't. That's why I thought the book was so good. Right, what one piece of advice would you give our listeners that can help them?
Again, become the hero of your own life. Question everything, and trust yourself. Go out into nature, do things that challenge yourself. Step outside of your comfort zone, and learn to listen to what drives you inside.
One of the bits I quite liked where you say stop, sit down, and think.
Yes, yeah, and that stop, sit down, and think is really important. I teach it when I'm teaching people to navigate. If you've got lost, like the initial reaction to being lost is to run around in panic, which gets you into even worse of a situation. So just stop. Make a cup of tea and listen and reassess, and then go back into it. And you go back into it a lot calmer with a much more ability to have a big picture overview rather than the sort of micromanaging. Running around like a crazy headless chicken. Yeah,
I've got a new question. So you don't know this one, so you might not have an answer for it because it's quite a weird one. But my friend Pete said, "Hey, ask your people this question." It's taken off Adam Bilsher's show. It's a podcast which is dissecting high performance in tennis. I'm not sure whether that's got a wide listenership, but thank you, Adam. Blitcher. I'm stealing your question. What's something you believe that others think is crazy? It's a tough question. I wish I'd asked you before we'd. I wish I'd prepped you for it, but.
What do I believe?
Is there anything you believe in that others think is crazy?
Well, I think I believe, to some extent, in the prepperism side of things, in terms of which I know a lot of people think is a crazy movement, in kind of preparing for the future. And it's I'm looking at it in preparing in terms of stockpiling food maybe, or fuel, but also preparing your mind as well. And I think that's what prepperism really is all about.
Right. Okay. What's a mistake people make? Maybe even doing your job, but what's a mistake people make?
Trying to run before they can actually have got this. Yeah, before they can walk and they've actually got the skills. People are so keen, often, particularly within the TV industry, for the glory.
Yeah.
But actually, there's a huge responsibility behind it. So get a really strong foundation. Doesn't matter what you're doing in life, whether it's the outdoors or becoming a lawyer or a doctor. Get a really strong foundation before you start reaching higher.
And finally, any life hacks?
You've
got so many.
Yeah, I've got loads.
Here's how to start a fire with just using wood. Go on.
Well, actually, one of the things I got taught really early on was actually always zip up the compartments on your rucksack. Because whenever you stop to get anything out of it, always zip those compartments up, because it'll stop any spindrift in the snow or sand or bugs getting inside.
Ridiculously, this Marine taught me how to pack, and you didn't think about how to pack, but he also made everything watertight. And he said, just in case there's a leak. So everything that week, because we had to have a dry set of clothes and all that thing that's in your book. And I was thinking, he's going way over the top here. But reading your book, it's so important. Even how you get across a river is amazing, how you keep things dry and everything else. And I can't recommend your book enough. And we haven't done it justice on this. We've given it a good hour or so. But I really recommend reading it. It's Megan Hine, Mind of a Survivor. If people want to follow you, are you on social media?
I am, yes. Yeah, Instagram at Megan Hine.
And Twitter?
At Meg Hine.
At Meg Hine,
yep.
Okay. And what have you got coming up next? Anything exciting?
So I'm actually back up to North Wales. We're filming in North Wales for the next few days. And then out to the Dolomites for a Chinese shoot.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sorry I've been so gushing about your book. It is brilliant. I recommend everyone buy it, and I reckon buy it for people as gifts. It's a very good book, and especially if you've got kids, get it for them, because they should learn a bit about survival and also how to accept life and take responsibility for your own life. Thank you so much for coming on, Megan.
Thank you.
That was Megan Hine. Mind of a Survivor is the book out now, and it comes out in paperback in April, I believe.
That's right. That's what she said.
What did you think? Did you like her?
She's a formidable person. I think her stories are amazing. The way she looks at life is brilliant. I don't know, I use these words all the time, but I don't know how else to describe that one.
Do you know what was great about it is, because I'm a massive fan of the book and I keep banging on about it. But what I loved about it was that she was actually really lovely as well. So fortunately she had an appointment to go to, Mark. Otherwise, I think I'd have just chewed her ear off for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, she looked pretty keen to go.
Isn't it this podcast brilliant though that we're getting these people on?
I was standing there while she was talking, thinking about standing in your kitchen, listening to these people talk. We're really lucky to do this.
Do you know what? It's brilliant, and as I say, I can't recommend her book highly enough. Buy it for someone as a present. Read it yourself. Mind a Survivor. Megan Hine. We will be back next Monday with more of the same rubbish.
It's not rubbish, Tim.
Rubbish. No, you're right. More quality entertainment from Mark and myself. See you on Monday.
Oh, so just very quickly,
yes.
Don't forget to get your professional life hacks in from your jobs.
Oh yeah,
because I'm really excited about this.
Okay,
I think
make sure you do that. So if you've got life hacks and you're in an industry, maybe you're a plumber or anything,
anything,
yeah, then send it in. Your life hacks. See you on Monday.
Bye.